Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the StarLadder and iLeague StarSeries Season 3. I'm Noxious, your host for the day, and with me on the casting bench, replacing none other than Firebat himself, is Paul Nemeth, LG Zille. How you doing, man?
Doing great. I'm excited to cast this match. We got, I think, Pavel versus RDU for our first match of the day, so reigning world champion up against the guy who, I think just 2 days ago, or 1 or 2 days ago, finished top 4 in EU Spring Prelims, qualifying for the European Championship of Hearthstone. So he's also on his way to potentially becoming world champion.
Yeah, RDU doing very well this year. You know, he's had some rough patches in the past attending the circuit, and in this case has found himself qualifying for the whole thing. And RDU against Pavel is going to be our first match, but we have more coming. We have 5 more after that. Stan Sivka versus Shadodachi, Kalento versus Sho. Then I believe we've got Thais versus Orange, 6-0 versus Bonnie Hopper, which we also saw recently play, and Frozen versus Orange, pitting Frozen, which I think is the player with the worst core in the current event. Closest is Sho. Frozen right now, 0-5, has 0 chance to go forward. It's usually very common in these spots for players to simply kind of give a no-show.
All right. And we can see RDU is currently undefeated in his group at 1 win, 0 losses. Pavel's 1-1. So it's early stages of this group bracket, but I think the gist of it is it's a round-robin group, 8 players, so everyone's playing every other player, so that's 7 matches per player. And then the top 2 will go to, I think, the Ukraine to play the grand finals in person.
Right, the live event. Exactly. You yourself are playing in the event, actually. You know, you're 2-1 right now in the group stage. A lot of the players in your group were actually traveling before, recently. I think on the 16th of May, they kind of came back and got to resume. So with the whole, event that happened in China, a lot of the players are, have a much lower number of games played. And this is the case of RDU and Pavel specifically, which basically they started playing about a week ago at this point.
Yeah, so that was maybe an advantage for me in the early group stages where my opponents are kind of jet lagged and traveling. But then there's kind of the reverse effect. If I make it to the grand finals, I'm traveling much further than everyone else in the group is. I'm going from the USA all the way over there, and other people are kind of already in Europe or whatever.
Yeah, actually, that makes it's going to even things out in the long term. Now, as far as the lineups go, in the tournament, I'd say we've seen kind of 2 strategies emerge. We've had people that just go full anti-aggro, to just bring control decks, with the idea of narrowing it down to 1 aggro deck and just preventing that one from winning. And then we've had the, I want to say, more effective strategy of bringing aggro decks and eventually putting your opponent in a spot where, they can't ban everything. So there's at least one of your decks that's going to go through. How do you feel about the general strategies and the conquest in the current format?
It's very complicated, and there's a lot to say. I don't think control really counters aggro that well. A lot of times it's more the other way around. It seems like a lot of times the faster decks wins. But it looks like we're getting into the match pretty soon here. RDU's Druid. Pavel banned RDU's Druid, so that was probably, looking at RDU's lineup, I would say that was a token Druid, right? He probably has Pirate Warrior, Aggro Murloc Paladin, I would say Quest Rogue, and a token Druid. Pavel bans the Druid, not the Quest Rogue. And for Pavel's lineup, do you remember his decks?
Oh yeah, they're all slow. J Druid, we're talking about Discover Mage, I believe. The mid-range Paladin, I think Shadodachi was running Control, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a Taunt Warrior from Pavel. So, when I say they're trying to target aggro, that's kind of what I mean. They're bringing lineups that are trying to isolate something like Pirate Warrior by just generating the most armor possible. Like, even if you tech the deck well enough, quote unquote, you can usually isolate those decks. But the problem is it's really tough to corner mid-range Paladin and aggro Paladin at the same time as you're targeting, Pirate Warrior. And Quest Rogue gets away with it because you're forced to ban the more aggressive deck, which is aggro Druid. So there's really no way to... When the decks were submitted, a lot of people had strategies that I think over time, as they saw the matches unfold, realized simply didn't work out. And so Rogue ends up being live for a lot of players when they just would rather never do so.
Maybe RDU didn't bring Quest Rogue. Maybe it's a Miracle Rogue is what I'm thinking, because it's a little bit weird for Pavel's lineup to leave up a Quest Rogue over a token Druid.
I don't believe we saw it because last time it was banned and he got to play the Paladin, the Warrior, and the Druid for the one match that we saw him play on stream. So either Pavel's got information as to what that rogue is, because we didn't get to see it. It was a simple ban. So maybe there was some talk.
Well, I think I've seen RDU play Miracle Rogue in other events recently, I want to say. So maybe that's kind of what Pavel's going off. Maybe he's seen RDU playing Miracle Rogue elsewhere. He assumes it's Miracle Rogue for this. And he says, well, Miracle Rogue's reasonably beatable. Pavel's Mage should do well against the Rogue regardless, be like slightly favored kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if Pavel has a Jade Druid and not Token Druid, which I'm pretty sure you're right about that, then the Druid's going to suffer against the Rogue, kind of regardless of what kind.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, whatever Rogue you have, you're pretty much... you're kind of screwed as Druid, because you end up like just falling behind so early on tempo. If you ever get there, the Rogue just ignores whatever you're doing. The armor generation doesn't matter as much either. Like, it's pretty, but ultimately it's kind of slow. Relies on the Rogue leaving your board up nonstop, which is usually not the case. Thing is, RDU's lineup, I think, would... like, if I were to evaluate this blind, I would say Rogue is definitely Quest Rogue. But if you're telling me he's favoring Miracle Rogue as a personal preference, that'd be interesting to me, because RDU strikes me as the guy who plays the min-max decks, and Quest Rogue definitely feels like one of those.
Yeah, I hear you. So let's see. What else can we talk about here? I would say RDU has the lineup advantage, and we're getting it. You're right. You had the Discover Mage for Pavel, and it's can't really say what kind of Paladin based on those cards.
It's the aggro list. Yeah. Here we go. Smork has been the motto of RDU in the event so far, and it's worked out for him.
And aggro was expected based on how the rest of his classes looked. And it's kind of expected based on RDU. RDU is more of an aggressive player. He tends to favor those style of decks. So a bunch of options for turn 1 for RDU here. He'd coin out double 1, he'd coin out Hydrologist, he'd play just 1/1, and preserve the option of coin for later. I think that's what he's going for, yep.
Like, let's just look at Pavel's side of things. Usually, I think the Discover Mage doesn't draw this well. Like, the Mana Worm and the Babbling Books are okay, but finding 2 of them against an aggro deck is brilliant, having the ability to get that 1/3 out on the board. So this is one of the better starts for Pavel by far, I think. Just going here.
So RDU kind of missed here. He would have liked to have coined a Murloc War Leader out so he could get a value trade with his Violent Inquisitor. Outside of that, he'd like to have a Rockpool Hunter for turn 2. He doesn't have either the best possible plays to buff his current minion, but he does have a bunch of Murloc-y stuff to play. It's a question of how to sequence it. It's very tricky.
Could start with a secret and then see if you want to... because if you get, say, Noble Sacrifice, it's not too bad. If you get yourself a Redemption, you get to stick the minion again, force the mage to expend a ping, or at least get the body back to then buff it with Cold Light Seer. I don't mind that. Not awful. But yeah,
I can see Noble Sacrifice. I like Noble Sacrifice a lot here. Putting 2 damage on an enemy minion, preventing it from attacking for the turn. A lot of times, Pavel's going to have just 2/2/3s attacking next turn. He's probably playing some kind of spell on turn 3. Because even if he plays a minion on turn 3, it would be what? Kirin Tormage, or is he not playing that? No,
Cabal Courier, probably, right? Like, that would have to be Cabal Courier, and that's fairly low values. You're expecting either another 1-drops, which is kind of unlikely at this point, plus a ping. So, yeah, I think you're right. Most of the time, you're expecting a spell out of this.
So RDU picks up Redemption, doesn't coin out the Redemption, doesn't coin out the Violent Inquisitor, doesn't coin out the Grimscale Chump. He's thinking next turn he wants to go 1-drop Grimscale Chump, coin Oracle next turn, and that way his 2/1 gets immediately buffed up to a 2/3, never in ping range. He's going to get multiple buff effects off this Cold Light 3-mana 2/3 thing.
Okay, Stonehill Defender can also slow down a little bit here. Now, if you RDU, that deck usually contains only Ice Blocks, maybe an Ice Berry if it's playing the slower versions. This is not Secret Mage. I think RDU has that knowledge from having seen the previous VODs. So no real reason to play around secrets that just aren't there.
Interesting. Goes with the Stonehill Defender.
Yeah. I kind of like that. It lets you keep the coin for like turn 4, Murloc coin, Cold Light Seer. So that way you get maximum Murloc buffs. And then that sets up really nicely for the General Megasaur on Natural 5.
Sure, he's preserving flexibility again. He did, by doing it this way, by not playing Murloc, coin, 2/3, buffing the health of your minions, he allows this 1/1 to be pinged off. So it ends up being kind of break even, but he had potential upside if Pavel didn't have time with his turn to ping off that 1/1 Murloc. So maybe that's why he sequenced it that way.
Yeah.
Here comes that.
We're gonna take our
redemption.
sweet time, is what's happening here. We need to soften
yeah.
up the board, I guess. That Meta Worm's just doing too much.
Well, Burn Bristle Redemption is just a very powerful combo because you're redeeming a minion with Divine Shield. So it's instead of redeeming it at 1 health, it's sort of at 2 health or 2+ health.
Zelai's kind of elegant in the way he speaks. He goes, "You're redeeming a minion. You're not redemptioning." Typical card game speech says you just add "ing" at the end of the name of the card. Zelai's like, "Nope. You're redeeming a 2/2 with Divine Shield." Truth is, it's actually kind of hard to really assume those Murlocs are going to stick anyway. So, like, even if you had like a lesser board, maybe this is still the play to slow down and just get max value from everything you've got.
I'm honestly surprised at how fast RDU has been playing his turns, because from my perspective, they seem very complicated. Just a lot of options with that coin. He seems to have a lot of experience with the deck to be so confident with his plays, so he can make them very quickly.
So maybe the coin's got some value as well. You know, if he's holding on to those Murlocs, and assuming he's trying to extract max value from the Cold Light Seer, which it looks like that's what he's doing, really. If that's his goal, then that coin has even more upsides the longer you wait.
Sure.
Do you ever assume we see just a... I mean, Blue Guild trade is okay, but then you could go for, like, next turn, play all the Murlocs for 7 mana and go crazy.
Well, he's got to do something this turn, and I think that's why he's going for it. It's possible that RDU hasn't seen Pavel's Mage, and he's worried about that secret being... He's worried about saving coin for a potential counterspell kind of thing. And that's maybe why he's playing the way he is.
Or trying to maximize like a tempo play where he gets Kings plus Megasaur at this point. That wasn't in his hand earlier, but it's definitely a consideration now. Like if you can get that Megasaur with a Kings, if you're waiting 1 extra turn. Depends what the draw is, but yeah. That's a good pickup.
Oh yeah, 2 mana, 2/3, deal 3. You could do worse. And the great thing about it is it gets him around that redemption on Wickerflame Burn Bristle.
No, that's the big upside of it, because otherwise he was looking still a little bit off, and then RDU had initiative with the Murlocs.
Now the awkward thing about this turn for Pavel is he's clearing a bunch of minions going into the potential Flame Strike turn, so he's kind of losing Flame Strike value at this play, but it's just such a strong play. He wants to make it. Flame Strike will pretty consistently be strong against Murloc Paladin. Doesn't need to try to set it up.
I was going to say, like, I think trading to the 2/6 sets up better for it. And you're even preventing stuff like Kings from punishing you too much. You are giving a value trade to your opponent, but that does not matter too much. So what is it bad against? Another Cold Light Seer with the Megasaur on the coin, let's say?
A huge downside to that attack Pavel just made is it looks weird on board to RDU. So now RDU is saying, okay, why did he make this weird-looking attack? It must tell me something about his hand. And then he's looking at, oh, well, the Mage is going into turn 7. Maybe there's a Flame Strike. So now RDU is more likely to play around Flame Strike a little bit harder based on that attack from Pavel.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're trying to gauge how much the information you're giving away really matters. But I think at the end of the day, there's really little that RDU can do if he wants to close out the game.
Big
Pick up the
Megasaur
Death Rattle! Wow, okay.
Yeah, Flame Strike this, buddy. So RDU saved the coin all this time, and on turn 6, he finally uses to get to Megasaur Adapt 4 minions. So that Megasaur got 8 1/1s for him, so it's 13 attack and 12 health for 4 mana.
Seems about good.
Yeah, I'd probably play 2 of those.
Yeah.
I'd play 2 of those.
I'd play 1 just as a tech, you know, just seems good enough. It's like a Kalimos in this spot. RDU is going to try to kill... I mean, Pavel's going to try to kill off whatever doesn't leave tokens behind, right? So the least stuff that's left over on the board. But the issue is those Murlocs on their own are a huge problem. If War Leader comes up... oh, man.
That's spicy. Now, he could Kings the War Leader to try and protect his board a little bit from, like, a Frostbolt or a Volcanic Potion ping on the War Leader. But it walks right into a Fireball ping on the War Leader. So he's got to do some math.
I mean, you've got to kill the Mage fast, right? Because if you're protecting that little minion on the board right now, it's still a 6/2 after Flame Strike, right? And then you're getting a bunch of 1/1, so you're still pushing for the block pop.
Right. And there's the fireball that Pavel would have needed had RDU put the kings on his Murloc War Leader. You don't have to kill the mage fast necessarily in this kind of position. It's more about protecting your board so that whatever Pavel has in his hand to try and answer the board isn't too efficient. That's generally the mindset as the Paladin in these kinds of positions.
Now, slightly awkward. The board is filled, so RDU could not have played something else. Pavel's still going to say, you know what, it doesn't matter to me. You can play Bluegill Warrior if you have it. Oh, well, that's a block pop.
Yeah.
Sunkeeper does it.
So had Pavel not pinged that 1-1, RDU would not have been able to pop the block with this Sunkeeper Terran, but I suppose it's the only card that really punishes there.
But the thing is, if you're going to clean up the board with AoE anyway, why ping the 1-1 first, right? All you're doing is giving your opponent the ability to pop it. I'm not sure if that ping was, in hindsight, the right play. But I have to look at all the scenarios to really make that evaluation. It definitely seems off, though.
And now that Sunkeeper Terran is played, Pavel's Volcanic Potion is not going to get the job done in terms of clearing things off. Kind of looks like really tough for him to survive here. I mean, he's got Ice Block to buy a turn for sure, but there's such a strong board save from RDU that the defensive Alexstradamus, it doesn't really accomplish anything.
You need Blizzard number 2, I guess, or Nova off something, I guess. If there's like another Babbling Book, you could always pick up the Nova. Cabal Courier could stall it for one turn, but right now it's not looking like the deck itself contains answers unless he's running the weird, one of Nova tech. Which would be pretty crazy. Like, frankly, if Pavel goes on the draw and picks up a Nova, a natural Nova in the deck, I'd be just mind blown.
There's no way.
There's just no way, but...
There's no Novas in that deck.
I want it to be.
There's a Cabal Courier for Nova in the deck.
Okay, you know what? That's good enough for me. Huh. Setting up the Flame Strike Volcanic Potion turn.
Okay. So
that he gets a 1-turn clear with 10 mana open. Unfortunately for him, there's going to be the Bluegill Warrior in RDU's hand. He knows he's dead to choose over champions and Consects and Bluegills if they're even in there. So...
yeah, he's just hoping that RDU doesn't have any of that charge damage, because if he survives another turn after this, then he could defensive Alexstradamus and actually win the game. So Pavel taking the line to win the game, and he's going to lose.
Yeah, so
wait, what if he plays an Ice Barrier here? Then he could actually win this game.
Sure, I mean, you're not even dead to True Silver Champion, which is your biggest worry. I think he played around True Silver earlier, I think, when he pinged the 1-1, did he? Were there 3 or 4? Because if he pinged one of them, he was playing around True Silver.
There were 3 that got to attack. There were 4, and he pinged 1, leaving 3.
Okay, that's why. He was playing around True Silver Champion, that's right.
That's 1 overkill, I believe. So RDU takes it. RDU had some fortunate draws at just the right moments. Picking up Murloc War Leader when you had a board of Murlocs that were ready to attack. Picking up this Blessing of Kings for lethal. Also picking up Sunkeeper Terran when you had 1 board slot to pop Pavel with.
Yeah, the Bluegill Warrior on its own was not sufficient, but it gave outs to RDU that he didn't have necessarily. But Pavel really was playing around that True Silver. I think that ping is what that indicated. Since Bluegill Warrior on its own was not enough, and you really needed to have Sunkeeper Terran, which is the only out that you're opening up. So, looking back on it, Pavel's play was probably correct.
I mean, I would just assume Pavel's play is correct at this point.
Yeah,
you shouldn't say things like that. But man, he has been winning a lot lately. It is hard to explain other than he has to be not only correct but also a little bit lucky sometimes. I want to say just to be winning as much as it's ridiculous how much winning he's been doing this year. It's hard to believe how consistently he's been winning.
You know what they say, right? There's a rumor running around that Blizzard rigs your account with RNG as it's made, right? So you then have to roll the right account. So you have to restart your Hearthstone account every 2 weeks just to make sure that you can just maximize your RNG.
Yeah, when I hear people say things like this, I just assume they're joking because it makes me like them better.
Never.
If they're telling me a joke, then I'm like, ha ha ha, funny joke. But if I seriously believed somebody thought that, I'd be a little bit triggered. I'd be a little upset. All right, so 1-0 to RDU, taking a tough, close game. I would say RDU's deck was unfavored against Pavel, but he kind of drew some of the right cards at the right time. He sequenced things well to maximize value. That coin Megasword turn got just a ton of value. And now we're going into Pirate Warrior versus Jade Druid, which is a pretty close matchup. which is kind of surprising to me from like an intuitive level. I would think, okay, so Jade Druid's sort of weak to early minion pressure. Pirate Warrior is good at that. But somehow, like, the power level of Jade Druid is so high, like Innervate, Primordial Drake, Earthen Scales. These new cards really just add a lot of strength and versatility to the defensive Jade suite, so it can actually beat aggro decks a good percent of the time. And wow, look at this hand. He's going to be able to double Innervate Primordial Drake at some point in this game. Turn 2 Wild Growth, turn 3
that's
gonna
crush. You can basically just play the Drake on turn 3 effectively, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because RDU will simply not have the weapon damage ready to do so, or like the board presence, usually, to answer it. In this case, he's not looking too bad off, though, because he's got the Heroic Strike, he's got the 4/3 Fiery War Axe. I don't think it lines up better for RDU, like as a roster of minions to have to answer the Drake.
Look at this, RDU has a very powerful hand, yeah, and the 2 damage AoE from the Drake just not getting it done against these 3 health pirate minions. Gadget with 2 Innervates and a coin on hand is pretty interesting, but...
How do you feel about Jade Spear just to soften up the board a bit?
So the issue
and
with the
then
Jade
you get
Spirit,
a better Drake.
Right, the issue with the Jade Spirit is that the 2/3 dies to the weapon, and this is your first Jade card of the game, so you're spawning a 1/1 Jade, which could die to patches, so you're not actually necessarily softening up anything for the Primordial Drake. That said, it's a way to spend the turn.
You could capitalize on your opponent's greed, right? Worst case scenario, you're setting up a Gadatan turn, perhaps where you go like coin, innervate, swipe, or something. Like there are definitely plays in the deck that can improve his board state. The issue is if you're going to be required to play that Drake on, as early as possible, this is not going to be an easy game for Pavel. Kind of capitalizing on RDU's potential greed and not banking on him making a mistake. Ugh. That's
RDU has a hell of a hand, and it lines up pretty well against what Pavel's doing with this early Primordial Drake. And I think it might be time for the Primordial Drake to hit play. It might be too much damage otherwise.
I mean, is there a world in which you just go for the coin gadget into double Innervate, Jade Idol, plus Feral Rage for armor gain?
Definitely.
Or are you so far behind on mana?
If you went for that kind of turn, you're sort of hoping to hit like a Wrath instead of a Feral Rage, so that you can take out that 6/3. Because gaining life when your opponent has, 15 attack on board is, it keeps you alive, but it doesn't deal with the recurring threat of just minion damage turn after turn after turn. And so that's why he's going for this, killing off 2 of his opponent's minions and setting up the trade with the 3rd, except for that there's the Heroic Strike, allowing RDU to perfectly clear through this Drake with just his face, allowing the 6/1 Bloodsail Raider to connect face again.
Another 7 damage in hand, 10 over 2 turns. Sometimes Heroic Strike's a bit clunky, because sometimes you have chat lethals, where you can attack twice with your Heroic Strikes. But in this case, it didn't matter much that all the damage had to go into one swing. RDU is really drawn well, given the matchup and given the what Pavel had at hand, and that is an insane draw.
Double Feral Rage.
Goodness.
Yeah, Pavel needed something. He was gonna die here. He was staring down 13 damage. I guess he could have gone to 14. So, anyways, I want to mention RDU hero powered last turn instead of playing Fiery War Axe, which is to play around a weapon destruction effect.
Yeah, like a Gluttonous Ooze. I think we've seen a lot of Gluttonous Oozes and Jade Druid in this event so far. So definitely not unreasonable to play around. Can't afford losing that last axe.
It also gave him the upside if he could just play this in his off first made as a 1-mana 1/1 without overwriting his Fiery War Axe.
Alright, so RDU putting himself on draws that deal damage through taunts, so that's Moral Strikes in the deck. There's 2 of them, and then we're talking about those, as ways to... Oh my god!
Wow, Pavel's just got all of it in his Jade Druid. This game's been crazy.
For all the good draws that RDU had, I mean, this draw by Pavel is essentially the best in his deck, potentially. I mean, I guess the Jade Behemoth's not bad, but you don't survive Mortal Strike with Jade Behemoth, so...
Yeah, he had Wild Growth on 2, double Innervate Primordial Drake, 2 Feral Rages to gain life, and a Gluttonous Ooze to destroy weapons. This is crazy. And this is why, even though Pirate Warrior kind of does the right things as a deck to match up well against Jade Druid, Jade Druid is just so powerful as a deck that it can just kind of fight through just about anything with the right cards.
Yeah, well, as far as saying, I remember, you know, talking to him about that, but he was saying Jade Druid is like 50-55 against everything in the game. I don't know if that's a statement that he still holds to, but
it's
early in the expansion, he was saying it's 55 against every deck.
Now, there's actually a lot of matchups where Jade Druid's like 80%. Yeah. Like, there's matchups where it just wins. Like, if you're playing against some kind of burn-based strategy, playing 2 Feral Rage and 2 Earthen Scales, good luck getting through that. It's not going to work out. It does struggle more against minion-based decks. Now, there are weaknesses of Jade Druid. In particular, Silence Priest is one of the more fun decks to counter Jade Druid with, because you just make a big minion. And Jade Druid doesn't have anything like Mulch for that anymore, so they just kind of flounder.
Well, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, but RDU is looking locked out. There's 14 health on that Druid and 8 more on the board for a total of 22, and RDU's got no way to go through this, and the Reaper, the last possible second. He's going to try his best, but it's not looking good.
Yeah. I honestly expected RDU to concede that turn. I expect maybe he's just kind of views it as scouting the Jade Druid. No, he kind of already saw the tech cards. At this point, he's seen the Gluttonous Ooze, and there's the Tark Reaper. Those are kind of 2 of the more swap-outable cards. Those are 2 of the more techable cards in the Jade Druid list.
Tark Reaper definitely is. I mean, we saw here at the end of the game, you know, RDU drew well, drew out everything, but the extra Gluttonous Ooze kept Pavel safe, gave him extra armor to prevent a death from like a 2-turn Reaper or a single Moral Strike. So the way the Jade Druid was stacked was definitely, as I said earlier, you know, able to contest some of those early aggressions. So you can isolate, you know, Pirate Warrior to an extent. It's just kind of tough, but Pavel's lineup does okay against it, I think, now that we're down to that.
Sure. So, tied up 1-1. What RDU really needed to win that last game was just like another big minion a little bit earlier. When it got to that turn where Primordial Drake started to clear his board, RDU, all he had left in hand was burn damage like Heroic Strike. And those cards aren't really good unless you need the Heroic Strike to get through a Primordial Drake or it's lethal. But for the most part, you just want to be developing a big sticky board, and he just didn't have the cards for that on that turn. So it is Quest Rogue for RDU, and he's got a Backstab in there as anti-aggro tech, which probably serves him reasonably well in this matchup, help protect that life total against the Mage.
Yeah, Apprentices become kind of painful pretty quick if they stick, if Pavel's including them. Some people are opting to not play them, which, you know, it's a choice they can make, but Apprentices, when they snowball with Mana Worm, something you need to answer. Backstab helps with that. This wall of 0-2s is kind of a problem for RDU for now, because he's not chipping away at that for a long time.
He didn't want to coin out the Igneous Elemental because then he's not playing Igneous Elemental on 3 to curve into the 12-year Stone Shaper on 4. Mm-hmm. And he didn't want a Dagger because it's just staring at some mirror images, so instead he goes to the Novice Engineer to try and like cycle through his deck to figure out what he's doing as far as completing the quest. Lyra is an interesting card because Quest Rogue does a poor job of clearing minions. Like, it has tiny chargers for it, the South Sea Deckhand and Patches and Stone Tusk Boar and a Dagger. It's really hard to add up to 5 damage with those kind of cards.
So this race being cut really changes it. Like, the way the earlier decks play out compared to now, they're much more all-in on the quest. They play Solitaire a lot more, basically.
Right. The downside to Lyra is you get Priest cards. When you don't have Radiant Elemental,
that's straightforward enough. What's the downside of Lyra? Well, the cards you get are from the Priest class. Is that bad enough for you? All right, got it. Not playing Lyra.
No, I think Lyra was a pretty reasonable pick there for Pavel. Just based on how hard it is for Quest Rogue to deal with that turn 5, just 3-5.
Yeah. Well, you get to chip in a ton of damage, but that 12-year Stone Shaper is kind of a recent tech that we saw included in that deck, because a lot of lists ended up gravitating towards the Glacial Shard package, of course with Fireflies, of course with the Igneous. So you end up with so many elementals that you can almost guarantee that this works, and we've even seen lists that include double Tolvir, 1 Tark Reaper, which I thought was, you know, really heavy on the elemental package, but it works for Quest Rogue. They can actually make it happen. It's kind of crazy.
So you could pick Conical to set up for a Flame Strike. Frostbolt is the burn option if he wants to try and burn out RDU, but looking at Pavel's hand, and RDU being at 28 life, he's pretty far off from burning. Still, 0 mana Frostbolt's just a powerful option. Notably, Pavel, yeah, so he goes for the Cone of Cold to probably play next turn to set up for a Flame Strike.
Yeah, I really like the setup, like especially when you have enough mana to go basically for the Valet for 3 damage. If you need to pop something first, develop some board before you Flame Strike, so you have something left over to chip away at the Rogue's health. Yeah, seems good.
So Pavel that turn held back by playing Primordial Glyph over Valet. He could have played Valet immediately, killing the Igneous Elemental, but he didn't want to start fighting for board immediately. He wanted to set up to fight for board more efficiently in a couple of turns. You know, he goes for the Primordial Glyph for Cone of Cold to set up for the Flame Strike, and then he'll start developing onto the board with cards like Medivh into spells spawning minions off Fatiash.
And that's a pretty big deal. This little 1-drop here weaves itself in pretty naturally to what he was going to do anyway. But we'll see whether or not Pavel's opting to pull the trigger on this. He's going to Cone of Cold almost no matter what, I think. But the question is what the rest of his turn looks like. That you do set up the Glyph now. Mana Worm out would be pretty good just before the Flame Strike turn.
I think he's going to Mana Worm, Cone of Cold, and Ping. That perfectly sets up to Flame Strike the board away and have the Mana Worm be connected. The Cone of Cold protects the Mana Worm.
I think having the body on the board works quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can see that. Just wants
that game needs to end soon. Like, you don't know exactly what the Rogue's got in hand. The longer this goes, the less and less confident you are you can take it. So the freeze is also such a big deal because the Rogue can't trade away the Igneous to start the bounce chain. You know, this is not a Firefly, so it has to die, which is a really big deal.
So already you can kind of smell the Flame Strike coming based on this turn 6 Cone of Cold. So he plays the Igneous Elemental, thinking if both these Igneous Elementals die, I get 4 Flame Elementals that can complete the quest right there. I'll have a prep to go with it if I want to vanish or if I want to prep out the quest.
It seems like the setup for Pavel worked out, except the Igneous Elemental number 2 was not in the plans. He did not anticipate there would be a quest completion being gifted to RDU, but he's about, in the point now where he can start burning, and the Rogue is going to try to do the same thing to him. So it's going to be down to Ice Blocks and damage output with Fireballs off the draw, Primordial Glyph even helping, possibly getting a Pyro.
I think Pavel might not have even minded the second Igneous Elemental because he kind of expected RDU to be able to complete the quest around now anyways. Mm-hmm. What Pavel's really focused on is just pushing face damage, and so RDU conversely is focused on protecting his life total.
Right. So it's kind of the burn phase of the game at this point for both players. And this is a board that's really hard to rival with. To rival straight up. It's just one of those weird things where the Rogue usually clocks you in 1 turn after the quest if you've given them so many little 1-drops to replay. The barring a freeze, Pavel's almost just going to take a block pop, and he's going to rely on those blocks to carry him. It's going to be tough with taunt minions, man.
This is the power of Quest Rogue. It went from having 0 minions in play and no quest completed to having 7 5/5s on play. 2 of which have taunt, so good luck pushing chip damage.
Have fun with that. I mean, so there's a way Pavel here, can choose to not have his block popped, because not have his block popped, sorry. Use the Firelands portal with Apprentice. I would have maybe developed the Apprentice just to put it face. Maybe he's got other plans. Because that was 6 mana, right, if you played the Apprentice?
Yeah, he could have played the Apprentice alongside that Firelands portal.
Does that matter, or does he value having reduction on like Ice Block and whatever comes out of it? I'm not too sure. I guess he's always giving more trading tools to his opponent. Huh.
Yeah, he might have wanted the extra minion in play. I guess he just thought it was too important to have access to that reduction in the future.
Interesting. Oh, that prep.
Prep check's not bad considering he has the Vanish. He can get a lot of value off that if he wants it, or a lot of tempo. It kind of gives him some options. I think ideally RDU is looking for a Charger of some variety.
So Apprentice into Glyph does nothing, right? Because if you pay... If you get Pyro, it's still not playable. It does something, but it doesn't win the game straight up. Flame Strike definitely does not.
Pavel needs a lot to win this game. What he needed was, you know, some Kabbalist Tome into Ice Block plus Stuff Chains.
Yeah. A Fireball here. A Fireball actually this turn would have won the game, right? Because he Fireballs pings.
And then he's one off.
Oh yeah, he wouldn't have enough mana to play Pyro. He'd be one turn off again for that.
Yeah.
Right. That Pyro was not off a glyph. So used to seeing them at this point. Ugh.
So let's see. I think Pavel's used both Primordial Glyphs, both Ice Blocks. So I think he's on 0 outs now.
He's on Babbling Book into block.
Oh, okay.
And I'd like these maybe Tome into Fireball block. I don't know, Frostbolt block, and then you pick up some insane follow-up to that. I don't know. It's gonna be a sequence of discoveries and random spell generation. There's really little else to it. It's like this sub 0.01% chance for it to land. But he tried to see it through. Didn't happen, and the Rogue is gonna take the game like Rogues tend to do.
Questro getting it done. I do believe. I would guess that most of the time Pavel's list is just a little bit favored in that matchup. But what happened is Pavel did not get any early minion game pressure, didn't have that Man-Worm Archaeologist start to push chip damage. And without that chip damage, it's really tough to get RDU in range to burn him down. And RDU, on the flip side, had a pretty nice curve of not taking damage into completing the quest and plopping full board of 5/5s. It's just tough to beat.
Yeah, it's 5 is also like kind of the crucial number to make it so the mage doesn't clear you up. That Flame Strike just does nothing. So barring some Thanos inclusion that lands at the perfect time, it's pretty rough. That patch is in hand though for RDU. At least the rest of the hand is looking really good. If it was, you know, kind of one of those Zalay hands where you just pick up a 4-drop, a 3-drop, a 3-drop, no weapon, it'd be different. But I think with this pressure opener, it sucks, but it's alright, you know. I'll suck it up if I'm RDU.
Sure, and the Frothing Berserker is a great pickup for RDU. That's the kind of high-value, repetitive minion damage sort of thing that he needs. He does have the weapons to protect his Frothing from Pavel's minions. He just needs to stick a big threat and get it going turn after turn. So he could play a 3/3 here and push another 1 chip damage. Chooses to coin the Froth and get that thing going immediately. It is a pretty good turn for Frothing. Pavel on 3 mana, he can't Fireball, he can't Frostbolt ping. He can Frostbolt it and set up to ping, but that leads to an awkward turn. So he just develops a secret. Figures he can take 2 from Frothing for a turn, deal with it later with like a Frostbolt ping or a Valet.
It's also really flexible for RDU because he can play, like if the follow-up could be like War Axe plus Dread Corsair, or War Axe patches to kill, you know, small stuff that's dumped on the board if there's a few minions, buffing the Frothing in the process. So flexibility there for RDU. Hand's looking a little bit tighter as time passes though. Like this hand is looking a little bit more difficult to make work going forward. You haven't pushed, you know, enough damage. You don't have a Korkron to really put the heat on.
Greenskin's a great pickup for RDU. That's not only a minion, but also an upgrade for an extra weapon swing. Before we saw that Greenskin, I would say RDU is in extremely bad shape. Now it's just kind of bad shape.
Yeah, upgrade would have been worse by far, right? Since you don't get the extra body on the board. So now, barring something like a Flame Strike that happens on curve, RDU should be able to push a ton of damage. But that Cone of Cold...
stops him right in his tracks.
Yeah.
Stops all the damage, clears 2 minions. It doesn't quite set up to clear next turn, because it leaves a 5/2 Raider behind. You just don't have anything for it.
But it gives you time to play the Ice Barrier, right? As weird as that sounds, it's like, sure, I can play Barrier at that point. If you've got no other play, it's still not completely dead. So,
but he take Arcane Explosion and ping, and that sets up to clear next turn. Is the idea.
So you get the ping Barrier on the...
So Pavel says, I have enough life, I can afford to take a hit here in order to set up to actually clear.
Okay, that weapon is getting spooky if you're Pavel.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, we see the upgrade on top of that. So RDU's got a custom-made Arcanite Reaper waiting to be played. Or Pavel's kind of been playing slowly.
Pavel's just taking a little bit of minion damage every turn, keeping the game close. He's not
More
quite
minion
able to
pressure,
clear.
man.
Yeah, that's what RDU needed. And Pavel's hoping to hit a taunt or a charger off this Fireland's portal. So something like Doomguard. Earth Elemental is the best one usually. Alley Armorsmith's always nice.
I'll take a Leroy in that case if you're offering. I'll take whatever. If it charges,
for any
I'm
taunt
good
or charge. Yeah, Psychotron. Let's go. Maybe
Psychotron would be sick. Oh,
it does. I think. Valet.
I think you might just Valet in this spot instead, since you've got the second block.
You can hit Frostbolt off this.
Yeah. Yikes.
Acknowledge something.
The minions are good, so they at least contest the green skin. So the weapon's gonna have to...
He goes for Girl of Archaeologist, so you can play Ice Block Firelind's Portal next turn. Now this is interesting.
Dang.
How does RDU do this?
I think he's gonna have to
leave the Korkron in hand, setting up to pop him from hand.
I like that more because anyway the minions don't matter, so you at least have a guaranteed second block pop, like no matter what, unless Mirror Image comes off nowhere.
He could have popped them with the 2 minions and saved the weapon. That was another way to do it. So he prefers having the Korkron in hand instead of the weapon in play.
But it plays less around Frostbolt, right? Like if you keep the weapon, so you're vulnerable to getting Frostbolted. Oh, well that's not good!
Whoa. Whoa.
RDU is going to have to end this game quick.
Well, good thing he has a Bittertide Hydra and a Pyroblast. Yeah. Those do end games quickly. Now, playing around the Frostbolt, not that relevant, I want to say, because he'd kind of seen that Frostbolt wasn't there the previous turn for Pavel, based on how Pavel played the previous turn. Okay.
Yeah, sure. The small out, you're right.
Korkron or Heroic Strike. He goes with Heroic Strike. Now it's becoming increasingly important to play around that Frostbolt. As turns go by, Pavel has more turns to draw that second Frostbolt or Primordial Glyph for it. The Korkron in his hand cannot be stopped by a Frostbolt, but the Heroic Strike can, so that's why Heroic Strikes.
No more Ice Block in Pavel's deck, at least not naturally, and on the board he's only looking at 13 health, so 4 off the damage. Close enough though. No weapons are not an out, so he's thinking, sure, we got a slight chance here if things line up. But without an Ice Barrier, without an Ice Block left in the deck, he's exhausted all the defensive measures the Secrets can offer. And that hold by RDU of the Korkron lead until the very last moment is paying off.
Nope, would have top deck lethal anyways. Leroy!
Doesn't matter! Add Leroy!
Well, well played by RDU, right? Yeah. To not need to top deck. Sequence things. Like it was a tricky decision in my eyes, the Korkron versus the Arcanite Reaper that one turn. He knew to hold the Korkron, and he was kind of rewarded for it with how the game panned out.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way this series was executed. We kind of saw the back and forth between control decks or slower decks versus aggro decks, and the reason why it's so difficult, right, for the control decks to catch up. We saw Jade, which is sort of a control list, and it came really close. Like, Pavel needed everything to line up to just beat what RDU had. And you're going to get those openers more consistently as Pirate Warrior than you will as J-Druid. So it sometimes just skews the matchup in the favor of the Pirate Warrior by a small margin. So anyway, RDU takes the first series of the day 3-1 up against his opponent, Pavel. So that's a world champion down. It's a decent morale boost as far as he's concerned. Next up is going to be Stanodachi versus Stan Sivka. Now, these two guys have a very different approach to lineup building. They're on the slower side, and there's a Purify Priest in Sivka's lineup, which, if it doesn't get banned, could be a pretty cool thing to look at. We'll be taking a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.